The autumn rain fell steadily against the windows of St. Mary's Children's Hospital in Chicago, creating a gentle rhythm that seemed to echo through the quiet corridors. It was October 15, 1987, and the world outside buzzed with excitement about the upcoming Peter Cetera concert at the Chicago Theater. But inside room 314, 10-year-old Michael Thompson lay motionless in his hospital bed, his small frame dwarfed by the medical equipment surrounding him. Michael had been fighting leukemia for 3 years. His once bright brown eyes now held a weariness that no child should ever know. The walls of his room were covered with get well cards from classmates, family photos, and posters of his musical heroes. But there was one poster that held a special place directly above his bed. A signed photograph of Peter Cetera that his father had managed to get at a Chicago concert 2 years earlier, before Michael's condition had worsened. The Glory of Love had become Michael's anthem during his darkest moments. His mother, Sarah, would sit by his bedside and play the song softly on her old cassette player, watching as her son's face would brighten just a little, his fingers moving weakly to the melody he knew by heart. That morning, Dr. Patricia Martinez entered the room with the kind of expression that every parent dreads seeing on their doctor's face. Sarah Thompson looked up from where she sat knitting beside Michael's bed, her hands trembling slightly as she set down her needles. "Mrs. Thompson," Dr. Martinez said gently, "could we speak privately for a moment?" Sarah's heart sank. She had been expecting this conversation, but that didn't make it any easier. She kissed Michael's forehead and followed the doctor into the hallway. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher out here, casting everything in a cold, clinical glow. "The latest tests show that Michael's condition has deteriorated significantly," Dr. Martinez explained, her voice filled with compassion. "His white cell count is continuing to drop despite the treatments. We're looking at days, maybe a week at most." Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She had known this moment would come, had tried to prepare herself for it. But nothing could have truly prepared her for hearing those words spoken aloud. She leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. "Is there anything else we can do?" she whispered, though she already knew the answer. Dr. Martinez shook her head slowly. "At this point, our focus should be on keeping him comfortable and making sure he's surrounded by the people and things he loves most." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. She thought about Michael's father, James, who was deployed overseas with the military and couldn't get leave to come home. She thought about all the dreams they had shared for Michael's future. College, maybe becoming a musician like his hero Peter Cetera, a family of his own someday. All of it was slipping away. "There is one thing," Dr. Martinez added hesitantly. "Michael has been asking about the Peter Cetera concert tonight. I know it's probably impossible, but he can't possibly attend," Sarah said quickly. "He's too weak, and the risk of infection." "I know," Dr. Martinez replied. "But sometimes, when we're facing the end, small impossibilities become worth pursuing." Has Michael ever met his hero? Sarah shook her head. "We tried to get backstage passes when Peter came to Chicago 2 years ago, but it didn't work out." Michael was so disappointed. They stood in silence for a moment, both women understanding the weight of the situation. Finally, Sarah straightened her shoulders and wiped her tears. "I should get back to him," she said. "I don't want him to be alone." Meanwhile, across the city, Peter Cetera was going through his pre-concert routine at the Chicago Theater. The venue was sold out, with over 3,600 fans eagerly waiting to hear him perform his greatest hits. But something felt different tonight. Peter found himself unusually restless, pacing in his dressing room instead of his usual calm preparation. His manager, Tom Rodriguez, knocked on the door. "Pete, we've got about 30 minutes until showtime. Everything okay in there?" Peter opened the door, adjusting his signature blazer. "Yeah, just feeling, reflective tonight. Being back in Chicago always does that to me." Tom nodded understandingly. Peter had been born and raised in Chicago, and performing in his hometown always brought up a complex mix of emotions: pride, nostalgia, and sometimes a hint of melancholy for the simpler times before fame had changed everything. "There's actually something I wanted to run by you," Tom said, pulling out a letter from his jacket pocket. "This came to our office yesterday, but I wasn't sure if I should show it to you before the show." Peter took the letter, noticing immediately that it was written in a child's handwriting, though the letters were shaky and uneven. The return address showed St. Mary's Children's Hospital. "Dear Mr. Cetra," the letter began, "my name is Michael Thompson, and I am 10 years old. I am in the hospital and very sick. My mom says I might not get better this time. I wanted to write to tell you that your music makes me feel less scared. When I listen to The Glory of Love, I pretend I'm the boy in the movie who gets to be brave and save the day. I know you have a concert tonight and I wish I could come, but the doctors say I can't. I just wanted you to know that you're my hero, and your music has been with me during all the scary times. Thank you for making such beautiful songs. Your friend, Michael Thompson." Peter read the letter twice, his eyes growing misty. He looked up at Tom, who was watching him carefully. "When did you say this came in?" Peter asked. "Yesterday afternoon. I called the hospital to verify it was legitimate. The boy is really sick, Pete. Terminal." Peter was quiet for a long moment, staring at the letter. Images flashed through his mind. His own childhood in Chicago. The power that music had held for him during difficult times. The responsibility that came with knowing your art could touch someone's life so profoundly. "Tom," he said finally, "I need you to call the hospital. See if we can arrange something. Pete, you know I'm all for charity work, but you've got a sold-out show in 25 minutes. Whatever you're thinking, maybe we could arrange something after the concert?" Peter looked at his manager with an expression Tom had rarely seen. A mix of determination and something deeper, more spiritual. "Tom, that little boy is dying. He wrote to tell me that my music has been helping him not be afraid. How can I stand on that stage tonight, singing about love and hope and glory, knowing that there's a child a few miles away who might not see tomorrow?" Tom recognized that tone. He'd been working with Peter long enough to know when the artist's mind was made up about something important. "What did you have in mind?" Tom asked, though he was already pulling out his phone. "I want to go to the hospital before the show." "Pete, that's cutting it really close. What if there's traffic? What if—" "Then we'll figure it out," Peter said firmly. "Some things are more important than starting exactly on time." Tom sighed and began dialing the hospital's main number. After being transferred several times, he finally reached Dr. Martinez. "Doctor, this is Tom Rodriguez, Peter Cetera's manager. We received a letter from one of your patients, Michael Thompson, and Mr. Cetera would like to visit him before his concert tonight, if that's possible." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you serious? This isn't some kind of joke?" "No, ma'am, completely serious. Mr. Cetera is here with me right now. Would it be possible for him to visit Michael this evening?" Dr. Martinez felt her heart racing. She thought about Michael, lying in his bed just a few floors above her, and about Sarah, who had been keeping a brave face while her world crumbled around her. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely. When can he be here?" "We can leave right now," Tom replied, looking at Peter, who was already grabbing his coat. "I'll call Michael's mother immediately," Dr. Martinez said. "Mr. Rodriguez, I can't tell you what this will mean to that little boy and his family." As they hung up, Peter was already heading toward the door. Tom grabbed his arm gently. "Pete, we need to call the venue. Let them know we might be running a few minutes late." "Do it from the car," Peter said. "Let's go." The ride to St. Mary's Hospital took 15 minutes through Chicago's evening traffic. Peter sat in the passenger seat, reading Michael's letter again and again. He thought about his own son, about how precious and fragile life could be, about the random cruelty of a disease that could strike a child. "You know," Peter said as they pulled into the hospital parking lot, "I've performed for presidents, for thousands of people at once, but I don't think I've ever been this nervous." Tom looked at his longtime friend and collaborator. "That's because this one really matters." They made their way through the hospital's lobby, following signs to the pediatric wing. The smell of disinfectant and the soft beeping of medical equipment created an atmosphere that was both sterile and somehow deeply human. Nurses moved quietly through the corridors, and Peter could hear the distant sound of a television playing cartoons in one of the rooms. Dr. Martinez met them at the elevator. She was a small woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and the bearing of someone who had dedicated her life to caring for children. "Mr. Cetera, I can't thank you enough for coming. she said, shaking his hand. "Michael has no idea you're here. His mother is with him, and I think it would be best if I prepare them first." "Of course," Peter replied. "Doctor, how is he?" Dr. Martinez's expression grew somber. "He's very weak. We're keeping him comfortable, but his time is limited. This visit, it means everything to him and his mother." She led them down the hallway to room 314. Through the partially open door, Peter could see Sarah sitting beside the bed, reading softly from a book to her son. The scene struck him with its simple beauty, a mother's love in its purest form, unwavering even in the face of unimaginable loss. Dr. Martinez knocked gently and entered the room. "Sarah, Michael, I have someone here who wanted to meet you." Sarah looked up, puzzled. Michael stirred slightly in his bed, his eyes opening slowly. "Who is it, Dr. Martinez?" Sarah asked. Instead of answering, Dr. Martinez stepped aside, and Peter Cetera walked into the room. The effect was immediate and profound. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, and she stood up so quickly that she nearly knocked over her chair. Michael's eyes widened, and for the first time in weeks, they held a spark of genuine joy. "Are you?" Sarah whispered, unable to finish the sentence. "I'm Peter," he said simply, walking slowly toward the bed. "And you must be Michael." Michael tried to sit up, his small hands gripping the bed rails. "You're really here?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Peter sat down in the chair beside the bed, bringing himself to Michael's eye level. "I got your letter, buddy. I couldn't very well have a concert in Chicago without meeting my friend Michael, could I?" Tears were streaming down Sarah's face, but she was smiling wider than she had in months. She watched as her dying son's face lit up with a happiness she had feared she would never see again. "I can't believe you came," Michael said, his voice growing slightly stronger with excitement. "I watch your videos all the time. Mom plays your songs when I can't sleep?" "Your mom has good taste in music," Peter said with a gentle smile. "Michael, I want you to know that your letter meant more to me than any review or award I've ever received. Knowing that music, my music, has helped you during tough times. That's why I became a musician in the first place." Michael's eyes were fixed on Peter's face, as if he were trying to memorize every detail. "Will you sing 'The Glory of Love' for me?" Peter felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Would you like me to?" Michael nodded eagerly, and Sarah moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed and taking her son's hand. Peter began to sing, his voice soft and intimate. Nothing like the powerful performance he would give on stage later that evening. This was music in its most pure form, one human being offering comfort to another through the simple act of song. Tonight it's very clear as we're both lying here. There's so many things I want to say. As Peter sang, something magical happened in that small hospital room. Michael's breathing became more relaxed, his body less tense. Sarah found herself singing along softly, her voice harmonizing with Peter's in a way that felt both spontaneous and somehow destined. "I am a man who would fight for your honor. I'll be the hero you're dreaming of." Other patients and staff began to gather quietly in the hallway outside Michael's room, drawn by the sound of the impromptu concert. Nurses paused in their duties, doctors stopped their rounds, and other families found themselves listening to music that seemed to transcend the sadness and sterility of the hospital environment. "We'll live forever, knowing together that we did it all for the glory of love." When the song ended, the room was silent except for the gentle hum of medical equipment. Michael had tears in his eyes, but he was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in weeks. "That was even better than on the radio," he whispered. Peter reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his guitar pick, the same one he had planned to use for that evening's concert. "Michael, I want you to have this," he said, placing the pick in the boy's small hand. "This pick has been with me for every major performance I've done in the past 5 years. Now I want it to stay with you." Michael looked down at the small piece of plastic as if it were the most precious jewel in the world. "I'll keep it forever," he promised. "I know you will," Peter replied. "And Michael, I want you to know something. You're the bravest person I've ever met. The way you fought this illness, the way you've kept your spirit alive, you're a hero." "I don't feel like a hero," Michael said quietly. "Heroes aren't supposed to be scared." Peter leaned closer, his voice taking on the tone of someone sharing an important secret. "Michael, can I tell you something? Every single time I go on stage, I'm scared. Every time I record a new song, I'm scared it won't be good enough. Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. It means you're human. And what makes someone a hero is what they do even when they're scared." Michael considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "So you get scared too?" "All the time," Peter admitted. "But you know what helps me?" "What?" "I think about people like you. I think about how music can bring comfort to someone who needs it, and that gives me the courage to keep going." Sarah, who had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement, stepped forward. "Mr. Cetera, I don't know how to thank you. This is the happiest I've seen Michael in months." Peter stood and turned to her, taking her hands in his. "Mrs. Thompson, you don't need to thank me. Your son has given me more than I could ever give him. He's reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place." Just then, Tom appeared in the doorway, checking his watch nervously. Peter saw him and nodded. "Michael," Peter said, turning back to the bed, "I have to go do my concert now. But I want you to know that when I'm up on that stage tonight, I'll be thinking of you. And every time I sing The Glory of Love, I'll remember our conversation." Michael's face fell slightly at the realization that the visit was ending. "Will I ever see you again?" The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of what everyone in the room knew, but no one wanted to say aloud. Peter sat back down and took Michael's hand. "Michael, I believe that music has a way of connecting people across time and space. Every time you hear one of my songs, I'll be right there with you. And who knows, maybe someday, somewhere we'll get to make music together again." It was a gentle way of saying goodbye, full of hope without making promises that couldn't be kept. Michael seemed to understand, and he squeezed Peter's hand as tightly as his weakened condition would allow. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for being my friend." Peter felt tears welling up in his eyes. "Thank you for being mine, Michael. You're going to be in my heart forever." As Peter prepared to leave, Dr. Martinez approached him in the hallway. "Mr. Cetera, what you've done here tonight, it's changed that boy's remaining time. Instead of fear and sadness, his last days will be filled with joy from this memory." Peter nodded, too emotional to speak for a moment. Finally, he said, "Doctor, will you please keep me informed about Michael's condition? And if there's anything at all that he needs, anything that might make him more comfortable." "Of course," Dr. Martinez replied. "And Mr. Cetera, I hope you know that what you've done here tonight is why people believe in the power of goodness." The ride back to the Chicago theater was quiet. Peter stared out the window at the city lights, processing the intensity of the emotional experience he had just shared. Tom glanced over at him occasionally, recognizing that his friend was in a contemplative state. "You okay?" Tom finally asked as they pulled up to the venue. "Yeah," Peter replied slowly. "Actually, I think I'm more than okay. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The concert that night was unlike any Peter had ever performed. Word had somehow spread among the audience about his hospital visit, and there was an electricity in the air that went beyond typical concert excitement. When Peter took the stage, the audience was on its feet before he had even said a word. "Good evening, Chicago," he said into the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces before him. "Before we get started tonight, I want to tell you about a friend of mine named Michael." He told the audience about Michael's letter, about the visit to the hospital, about the courage he had witnessed in a 10-year-old boy facing the end of his life. As he spoke, the theater grew quiet, thousands of people hanging on every word. "Michael reminded me tonight why we're all here," Peter continued. "Music isn't just entertainment, it's connection, it's comfort, it's hope, and sometimes, if we're very lucky, it's love." When he launched into The Glory of Love, the entire audience sang along with an intensity and emotion that was palpable. Peter closed his eyes during the chorus, remembering Michael's face as he had sung the same words just an hour earlier in that hospital room. After the concert, as Peter was signing autographs and greeting fans, a middle-aged woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Cetera," she said, "my daughter is also at St. Mary's Hospital. She's been fighting cancer for 2 years. When I tell her what you did for Michael tonight, it's going to give her so much hope." Similar conversations happened throughout the evening. Peter realized that his decision to visit Michael had created ripples that extended far beyond one hospital room. People were talking about compassion, about taking time for what truly mattered, about the difference one person could make in another's life. 3 days later, Peter was in his hotel room preparing to leave Chicago when the phone rang. It was Dr. Martinez. "Mr. Cetera," she said gently, "I wanted to let you know that Michael passed away peacefully this morning." Peter sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, the weight of the news hitting him like a physical blow. Even though he had known this call would come, it didn't make it any easier. "How is his mother?" he asked. "She's remarkable," Dr. Martinez replied. In her grief, she keeps talking about how grateful she is for the joy you brought to Michael's final days. She wanted me to tell you that he was holding your guitar pick when he died. Peter felt tears streaming down his face. "Thank you for letting me know, Doctor. And please tell Mrs. Thompson that Michael will always be in my thoughts and prayers." "There's something else," Dr. Martinez added. "Sarah asked me to invite you to Michael's memorial service, if you're able to attend. She said Michael would have wanted his hero there." "Of course," Peter replied without hesitation. "I'll be there." The memorial service was held at a small church on Chicago's South Side. Peter arrived early, not wanting to create a distraction during such a solemn occasion. He was surprised to find the church packed with people. Michael's classmates, hospital staff, neighbors, and others whose lives had been touched by the story of the dying boy and the famous musician who had taken time to visit him. Sarah Thompson spotted Peter as he entered and immediately came over to him. Despite her obvious grief, she embraced him warmly. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Michael would be so happy to know you're here." "I wouldn't be anywhere else," Peter replied. "Sarah, I am so sorry for your loss. Michael was an extraordinary young man." "He was," she agreed, her voice strong despite her tears. "And you helped make his last days extraordinary too. I'll never forget what you did for us." During the service, the pastor spoke about Michael's courage, his love of music, and the impact he had made on everyone who knew him. Then he surprised everyone by inviting Peter to come forward. "Michael's mother asked me to invite Mr. Cetera to share some words about her son," the pastor announced. Peter made his way to the front of the church, looking out at the assembled mourners. He had performed in front of much larger crowds, but this felt like the most important performance of his life. "I only knew Michael for a few hours," he began, "but in that short time, he taught me more about courage and grace than I had learned in years of living. Michael wrote to me because he said my music helped him not be afraid. What he didn't know is that his letter, his bravery, and his spirit helped me remember what it truly means to be human." Peter went on to talk about the power of music to heal, to connect, and to comfort. He spoke about how Michael's story had inspired him to look for more ways to use his platform to make a difference in people's lives. "Michael may have been just 10 years old," Peter concluded, "but he had the wisdom to understand something that many adults never learn, that love, expressed honestly and without reservation, is the most powerful force in the universe. Every time I perform The Glory of Love from now on, I'll be singing it for Michael and for all of us who have been touched by his example." As the service concluded, Peter joined the family and friends who gathered to share memories and support each other. He was approached by several families who had children facing similar battles, and he found himself promising to visit other young patients when his tour schedule allowed. One of Michael's classmates, a girl named Emma who couldn't have been more than 11 years old, approached Peter shyly. "Mr. Cetera," she said quietly, "Michael used to talk about you all the time. He said you were his hero, but I think maybe he was your hero too, wasn't he?" Peter knelt down to Emma's level, struck by the perceptiveness of her observation. "You're absolutely right, Emma. Michael taught me what it really means to be heroic. It's not about fame or success. It's about facing whatever life gives you with grace and courage." Over the following months, Peter found that his encounter with Michael had fundamentally changed his approach to his career and his life. He began incorporating hospital visits into his tour schedules, reaching out to children's hospitals in cities where he was performing. He established a foundation dedicated to bringing musical experiences to terminally ill children. But more than the formal charitable work, Peter found that his music itself had taken on new depth and meaning. When he wrote songs, he thought about Michael and other children like him, who found comfort in melody and lyrics during their darkest hours. His performances became more intimate, more emotionally honest. A year after Michael's death, Peter received a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a hand-knitted scarf and a letter from Sarah Thompson. "Dear Peter," the letter read, "Today marks 1 year since Michael passed away. I wanted to write to let you know how profoundly your visit continues to impact our lives. Not just mine, but so many others. The story of your kindness to Michael has been shared hundreds of times, inspiring other people to look for ways to bring joy to children who are suffering. I knitted this scarf for you using yarn in Michael's favorite colors, blue and gold, like the Chicago Bears. I know it might seem like a small gift, but I wanted you to have something made with love, something that represents the gratitude that our family will always feel toward you. Michael's guitar pick is buried with him, just as he requested. But the memory of your visit, the joy on his face that day, the way you treated him like he mattered, that will live forever in the hearts of everyone who knew him. Thank you for showing us that heroes come in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest act of heroism is simply taking the time to care. With endless gratitude. Sarah Thompson." Peter held the letter for a long time, remembering that October evening that had changed his life as much as it had changed Michael's. He thought about the randomness of human connection, the way lives could intersect for just a moment and create ripples that lasted forever. That evening, Peter was scheduled to perform at a charity concert for children's cancer research. As he prepared to go on stage, he wrapped Sarah's scarf around his neck and pulled Michael's story close to his heart. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer said, "please welcome Peter Cetera." As Peter walked onto the stage, the audience burst into applause. But tonight, like every night since Michael's death, he wasn't performing for the crowd's approval or for his own satisfaction. He was performing for a 10-year-old boy who had taught him that music's greatest power wasn't in its ability to entertain, but in its capacity to heal. He approached the microphone and looked out at the audience, hundreds of faces looking back at him with expectation and hope. "Good evening," he said simply. "Before we begin tonight, I want to tell you about a friend of mine named Michael Thompson and how he changed my understanding of what it means to make music that matters." As Peter began to tell Michael's story once again, the audience grew quiet, drawn into the narrative of compassion and connection. In the back of the concert hall, several families with children receiving cancer treatment listened with particular attention, knowing that they too were part of this larger story of hope and human kindness. When Peter finally began to sing, starting with "The Glory of Love," his voice carried all the emotion and meaning that Michael had helped him discover. The song was no longer just a hit from the 1980s. It had become a testament to the enduring power of love to transcend even the most difficult circumstances. "I am a man who would fight for your honor. I'll be the hero you're dreaming of." As the familiar lyrics filled the concert hall, Peter closed his eyes and pictured Michael's face from that night in the hospital, bright with joy despite his illness, full of courage despite his fear, radiant with the kind of pure happiness that reminded everyone present why music mattered. "We'll live forever, knowing together that we did it all for the glory of love." The song ended to thunderous applause, but Peter barely heard it. He was thinking about legacy, about the ways that one small act of kindness could ripple outward through time, touching lives in ways that couldn't be measured or predicted. After the concert, as Peter was greeting fans and signing autographs, a young boy approached him with his parents. The child was thin and pale, clearly undergoing medical treatment, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "Mr. Cetera," the boy said, "my name is David. I'm 8 years old, and I have leukemia like Michael did. I wanted to thank you for visiting kids like us. It means everything." Peter knelt down to David's level, feeling the familiar tug at his heart that these encounters always brought. "David," he said gently, "thank you for coming to the concert tonight. Are you a music fan?" "Yes, sir," David replied enthusiastically. "My favorite song is 'The Glory of Love' because my mom says it's about being brave, even when you're
Your
scared.
mom
Your mom is a very smart lady, Peter said, glancing up at David's parents, who were watching the interaction with obvious emotion. David, can I tell you something that Michael taught me? David nodded eagerly. He taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do what you need to do even when you are afraid. And from where I'm sitting, you look like one of the bravest people I've ever met. David's face lit up with the same kind of joy that Peter remembered seeing in Michael's eyes. It was a reminder that every child deserved to feel special, to feel valued, to know that their struggles mattered to someone. Would you like to have my guitar pick from tonight's show? Peter asked, pulling the small piece of plastic from his pocket. David's eyes widened. Really? You'd give it to me? Absolutely, Peter replied, placing the pick in David's small hand. This one has some extra special power in it from tonight's performance. As David and his family moved on, Peter found himself thinking once again about Michael and the chain of kindness that his brief life had set into motion. How many other children had been comforted by visits from musicians, actors, and athletes inspired by Michael's story? How many families had found hope in the knowledge that strangers cared about their struggles? The impact of that one hospital visit continued to grow, creating what Peter had come to think of as Michael's legacy, a reminder that fame and success were meaningless unless they were used to serve something greater than oneself. Years passed, and Peter continued to incorporate hospital visits and charitable work into his career. He kept a file of letters from families whose lives had been touched by these visits, and he often reread them when he needed to remember why his work mattered. On the 10th anniversary of Michael's death, Peter returned to St. Mary's Children's Hospital in Chicago. Dr. Martinez, now in her 50s but still working with the same dedication and compassion, greeted him warmly. "Peter," she said, embracing him like an old friend, "it's wonderful to see you again. I can't believe it's been 10 years since that night." "It doesn't feel like 10 years, Peter replied. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago." "Doctor," Martinez led him through the hospital, showing him the improvements and expansions that had been made over the decade. They passed the room where Michael had spent his final days, now occupied by another young patient fighting their own battle against illness. "Would you like to visit some of our current patients?" Dr. Martinez asked. "We have several children who would be thrilled to meet you." "Of course," Peter replied, as he always did. They spent the afternoon visiting with children throughout the pediatric wing. Peter sang songs, told stories, signed autographs, and listened to the hopes and dreams of young people facing uncertain futures. Each interaction reminded him of Michael and the simple truth that human connection could provide comfort, even in the most difficult circumstances. In the final room they visited, Peter met a teenage girl named Ashley, who was recovering from a bone marrow transplant. Unlike the younger children they had visited, Ashley seemed more reserved, almost suspicious of Peter's presence. "Ashley," Dr. Martinez said gently, "this is Peter Cetera. He's a musician who likes to visit our patients." Ashley nodded politely, but didn't seem particularly impressed. "I know who he is," she said simply. "My mom used to play his music when I was little." Peter sat down in the chair beside her bed, recognizing something in Ashley's demeanor that he had encountered before. The weariness that came from too many well-meaning visits from celebrities and other adults who meant well, but didn't really understand what it was like to face mortality at such a young age. "Ashley," he said quietly, "can I ask you something? Are you tired of people trying to cheer you up?" Ashley looked surprised by the directness of his question. After a moment, she nodded. "Yeah, actually I am," she admitted. "Everyone wants to tell me how brave I am, how I'm going to beat this, how I should stay positive. Sometimes I just want someone to acknowledge that this really sucks." Peter smiled at her honesty. "You're absolutely right. It does really suck. Being sick sucks. Being in the hospital sucks. Having adults constantly tell you how you should feel about it sucks." Ashley's expression softened slightly. "Most grown-ups don't like it when I say that." "Well, most grown-ups are uncomfortable with the truth sometimes," Peter replied. "But I learned something from a boy named Michael about 10 years ago. He taught me that it's okay to be scared, it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to admit that sometimes life is just really hard." "What happened to Michael?" Ashley asked. Peter told her Michael's story, not the sanitized, inspirational version that often appeared in magazine articles, but the real story of a frightened little boy who found courage in the face of death, and the impact that his honesty and bravery had made on everyone who knew him. Michael died, Peter concluded simply. And that sucked too. But his life mattered. Not because he beat cancer or because he stayed positive all the time, but because he was real and honest and kind, even when he was scared. Ashley was quiet for a long time after Peter finished the story. Finally, she said, "Thank you for not telling me everything's going to be okay." "I don't know if everything's going to be okay," Peter replied honestly. "But I do know that you're dealing with something incredibly difficult with more grace than most adults could manage. And I know that your honesty and strength are going to impact people in ways you might not even realize." They talked for another hour about music, about fear, about hope, and about the strange way that sharing our struggles could somehow make them more bearable. When it was time for Peter to leave, Ashley surprised him by asking if he would sing something. "Not The Glory of Love," she said quickly. "I mean, it's a great song, but everyone always requests that one. Do you know anything quieter? Something that doesn't try to make everything seem better than it is?" Peter thought for a moment, then began to sing "Hard to Say I'm Sorry," but he sang it differently than he ever had before. Slowly, softly, with all the vulnerability and imperfection that Ashley had asked for. It wasn't a performance. It was simply one person offering comfort to another through the most honest expression he could manage. When the song ended, Ashley had tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. "That was perfect," she said. "Thank you for not trying to fix everything with music. Thank you for just being here with me in the middle of this mess." Peter felt his own eyes welling up. "Thank you for reminding me that sometimes the best thing we can do is just acknowledge that life is complicated and difficult and still somehow beautiful." As Peter left Ashley's room, Dr. Martinez walked with him toward the hospital exit. "You know," she said, "in all my years of working here, I've seen hundreds of celebrity visits. Most of them are lovely, well-intentioned people who want to bring some happiness to sick children. But what you do is different. You don't just visit these kids, you really see them. You meet them where they are instead of where you think they should be." Peter considered her words as they walked through the quiet hospital corridors. "I think Michael taught me that the most powerful gift we can give someone isn't false hope or empty reassurance. It's the recognition that their experience matters, that their feelings are valid, and that they're not alone." "That's exactly right," Dr. Martinez agreed. "And that's why these children remember your visits years later. You validate their reality instead of trying to change it." As Peter drove away from the hospital that evening, he found himself thinking about the circular nature of inspiration and healing. Michael had written to him seeking comfort, but Michael's courage had ended up inspiring Peter. Ashley had initially been skeptical of his visit, but her honesty about the difficulties of illness had reminded Peter why authentic connection was so much more valuable than superficial cheerfulness. Over the years, Peter had come to understand that his role wasn't to cure anyone or even to make their pain disappear. His role was simply to show up, to listen, to acknowledge the full complexity of their experience, and to offer whatever comfort genuine human connection could provide. 6 months later, Peter received a letter that would become one of his most treasured possessions. It was from Ashley, written in her neat teenage handwriting on hospital stationery. "Dear Peter," it began, "I wanted to write to tell you that I'm doing much better. The doctors say my transplant was successful and I'll be able to go home soon. But that's not really why I'm writing. I keep thinking about what you said about Michael, and about how his life mattered not because he beat cancer, but because of how he chose to live while he was fighting it. I realize now that I've been so focused on whether I was going to survive this illness that I forgot to pay attention to how I was surviving it. After you left that day, I started really talking to the other kids here instead of just feeling sorry for myself. I've been reading to some of the younger patients, and I even convinced the hospital to let me start a music appreciation group, where we listen to different kinds of songs and talk about how they make us feel. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you helped me understand that my life has meaning right now, in the middle of all this uncertainty. Not just if and when I get better, You didn't try to convince me that everything was okay, but somehow you helped me find ways to be okay with everything not being okay. I'm attaching a picture of our music group. There are 8 of us now, and we meet twice a week. We call ourselves Michael's Musicians in honor of the boy you told me about. I hope that's all right. Thank you for seeing me that day, really seeing me, and for sharing Michael's story. It's changing how all of us think about what it means to be brave. Your friend, Ashley Thompson. Peter read the letter 3 times before he noticed the last name. Thompson. He immediately called Dr. Martinez at the hospital. Dr. Martinez, it's Peter Cetera. I have a question about Ashley Thompson, one of your patients. Is she by any chance related to Michael Thompson? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Peter, I'm surprised you didn't know. Ashley is Michael's cousin. Sarah Thompson is her aunt. Ashley was actually at Michael's memorial service 10 years ago, though she was only 8 at the time. Peter felt a chill run down his spine. The circular nature of these connections, the way lives intersected and influenced each other across time, never ceased to amaze him. Dr. Martinez, does Ashley know that I knew Michael? I'm not sure, she replied. Sarah might have mentioned it to her family, but Ashley never brought it up during your visit. Why do you ask? She named her music group Michael's Musicians. I don't think that was a coincidence. Peter could hear Dr. Martinez's sharp intake of breath. Oh my goodness, you're right. Ashley must have remembered you from Michael's service, or at least remembered the story. Peter, do you realize what this means? Michael's legacy isn't just inspiring you to visit other children. It's inspiring those children to help each other. That evening, Peter sat in his home studio, surrounded by guitars and keyboards and the tools of his trade, thinking about the intricate web of connection and influence that had grown from one simple act of kindness 10 years earlier. Michael's courage had inspired Peter to reach out to other sick children. Peter's visits had inspired Ashley to create a support group for her fellow patients. Ashley's group was now providing comfort and community to other children facing their own battles with illness. It was as if Michael's brief life had planted a seed that continued to grow and branch and bloom in ways that no one could have predicted. The 10-year-old boy who had been afraid of dying had ended up creating a legacy of life and hope that touched dozens of lives and would likely touch many more. Peter picked up his guitar and began to play The Glory of Love. But as he played, the song evolved into something new. New verses came to him, lyrics about legacy and connection, about the way love multiplies when it's shared honestly and without reservation. When we meet someone who's hurting, and we choose to really see, we become part of their story, and they become part of me. The song continued to evolve as Peter played, becoming not just a love song, but an anthem about human connection and the ripple effects of compassion. He realized that this new version of the song was really Michael's song, Ashley's song, and the song of all the children who had taught him that healing didn't always mean curing, and that hope didn't always mean happy endings. As the weeks passed, Peter found himself performing this new version of The Glory of Love at his concerts, always introducing it with the story of Michael and Ashley and the music group that had grown from their shared experience. Audiences responded to the song with unusual intensity, and Peter began receiving letters from people who had been inspired to reach out to others in their own communities. A teacher in Denver started a program where musicians visited children in her school who were dealing with difficult family situations. A businessman in Atlanta began volunteering at a local children's hospital after hearing Michael's story at one of Peter's concerts. A teenager in Seattle organized a benefit concert for pediatric cancer research, calling it Michael's Music Marathon. The ripples continued to expand, each act of kindness inspiring others, each connection creating the possibility for more connections. Peter began to understand that his role in this larger story was both smaller and larger than he had initially thought. Smaller because he was just one link in a chain of compassion that stretched far beyond his individual actions. Larger because his platform and his willingness to share these stories authentically had amplified their impact in ways that purely private acts of kindness might not have achieved. 15 years after Michael's death, Peter received an invitation that took his breath away. It was an engraved invitation to the grand opening of the Michael Thompson Music Therapy Center at St. Mary's Children's Hospital. The invitation was signed by Sarah Thompson, now Sarah Thompson Wilson, who had remarried and dedicated her life to pediatric music therapy. The opening ceremony was held on a crisp October afternoon, exactly 15 years to the day after Michael's death. Peter arrived to find a beautiful new wing of the hospital, dedicated entirely to music therapy and creative arts programming for young patients. The lobby featured a wall of photographs showing children engaged in various musical activities, and in the center of the display was a large portrait of Michael holding the guitar pick that Peter had given him. Sarah greeted Peter with the warm embrace of an old friend. She looked older, of course, but there was a peace in her eyes that hadn't been there during those difficult days 15 years earlier. "Peter," she said, "I can't believe you're here. This day feels like a dream." "Sarah, what you've accomplished here is incredible," Peter replied, looking around at the bustling activity as families and staff prepared for the opening ceremony. "Michael would be so proud." "This is all because of you," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "That night you visited Michael, you didn't just comfort a dying child. You showed me that music could be medicine, that human connection was healing." Everything that followed, my decision to go back to school for music therapy, this center, all of it, started with your visit that night. Peter shook his head gently. "Sarah, this started with Michael's letter. He reached out first. I just responded to what he had already set in motion." They were interrupted by a young woman approaching them. She was in her mid-20s now, healthy and radiant, with the bearing of someone who had survived difficult challenges and emerged stronger. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Peter Cetra?" Peter nodded, and the young woman's face broke into a wide smile. "I'm Ashley Thompson. Well, Ashley Thompson Martinez now. I don't know if you remember me, but you visited me at the hospital about 10 years ago. I was the grouchy teenager who didn't want to be cheered up." Peter's face lit up with recognition and joy. "Ashley, of course I remember you. You started Michael's Musicians. How are you?" "I'm wonderful," Ashley replied. "I've been cancer-free for 9 years now. I'm married to a wonderful man, and I'm actually the director of programming here at the new Music Therapy Center. I wanted to thank you for that conversation we had all those years ago. You helped me understand that my experience mattered, even the difficult parts." Peter looked around at the bustling center, at Sarah's proud face, at Ashley's radiant health, and felt overwhelmed by the profound way that lives could intersect and influence each other across decades. "Ashley, Sarah, what you've both accomplished here. This is beyond anything I could have imagined that night 15 years ago." "That's the thing about kindness," Ashley said thoughtfully. "When it's real and authentic, it grows in ways we never expect. You didn't visit Michael because you thought it would lead to all this. You visited him because it was the right thing to do in that moment. But look what grew from that one decision." The opening ceremony began with remarks from hospital administrators, city officials, and major donors who had supported the project. But the most moving moment came when Sarah took the podium to speak about her son and the legacy he had inspired. 15 years ago, she began, my son Michael was dying of leukemia in a room just down the hall from where we're standing today. He was 10 years old, scared, and fighting the hardest battle of his short life. But Michael had something that got him through those dark days. Music, and the belief that music could connect him to something larger than his illness. One night, near the end of Michael's life, a musician named Peter Cetera received Michael's letter and decided to visit him before his concert. That visit lasted less than an hour, but it changed the trajectory of our entire family's life. Peter didn't just sing to Michael that night. He saw him, really saw him, as a complete person whose thoughts and feelings and experiences mattered. He treated a dying child with the same respect and attention he would give to any valued friend. That experience taught me that healing isn't always about curing illness. Sometimes it's about affirming the value and dignity of every person, regardless of their circumstances. This music therapy center exists because of what I learned from watching Peter interact with Michael. But it also exists because of what Michael taught all of us about courage, authenticity, and the power of human connection. Every child who walks through these doors will be benefiting from the wisdom of a 10-year-old boy who understood that music could be medicine. As Sarah spoke, Peter found himself thinking about the mysterious ways that love and kindness created ripples that extended far beyond what anyone could predict or plan. Michael's letter to him had been a simple expression of gratitude from a scared child. Peter's visit had been an impulsive response to a heartbreaking situation. But together, those two actions had set in motion a chain of events that would provide comfort and healing to thousands of children over the coming decades. When it was Peter's turn to speak, he approached the podium feeling the weight of the moment and the responsibility of honoring Michael's memory appropriately. 15 years ago, he began, I received a letter from a 10-year-old boy named Michael Thompson. In that letter, Michael thanked me for making music that helped him feel less afraid during the most difficult time of his life. What Michael didn't know was that his letter was about to teach me the most important lesson of my career. That lesson was this: the value of our work isn't measured by the number of records we sell or the size of the audiences we perform for. It's measured by the connections we make with individual human beings who need to know that they matter, that their struggles are seen, and that they're not alone. Michael lived for less than 11 years, but his impact continues to grow every day. He inspired his mother to dedicate her life to helping other children. He inspired his cousin Ashley to create support networks for young patients. He inspired me to use my platform to reach out to other children facing similar battles. And now, through this center, he's going to inspire countless healthcare workers, therapists, and volunteers to see music as medicine and human connection as healing. This is Michael's legacy. Not that he conquered cancer, but that he conquered fear and loneliness and despair through the simple act of reaching out for connection. Every child who receives music therapy in this center will be benefiting from Michael's courage and from the ripple effects of one simple letter written by a scared little boy who believed that music could make a difference. Peter paused, looking out at the audience of families, medical professionals, and community members who had gathered to celebrate the center's opening. I want to close with something I learned from Michael and from all the other children I've had the privilege to meet over the years. They've taught me that healing doesn't always mean fixing what's broken. Sometimes healing means learning to live fully and joyfully in the midst of difficulty. Sometimes it means finding ways to help others even when we're struggling ourselves. And sometimes it means leaving a legacy of love that continues long after we're gone. Michael Thompson did all of those things in his short life. And this beautiful center stands as proof that one child's courage and one simple act of kindness can change the world. The ceremony concluded with Ashley leading a children's choir from the hospital in a performance of The Glory of Love. As Peter listened to their young voices singing the words that had become so meaningful to him over the years, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected ways that his life had been shaped by a dying child's letter. After the ceremony, as people mingled and toured the new facilities, Peter found himself in the center's main music room, which featured a beautiful piano and comfortable seating for group activities. Above the piano hung a simple plaque that read, "In memory of Michael Thompson, who taught us that music is medicine and connection is healing." A small voice behind him said, "Excuse me, are you the man who visited Michael?" Peter turned to see a young boy, perhaps 8 years old, with a pale complexion and thin frame that indicated he was currently undergoing treatment. The child was holding the hand of a woman who was clearly his mother. "Yes," Peter replied gently, kneeling down to the boy's level. "I'm Peter. What's your name?" "I'm Marcus," the boy said. "My mom told me that you came to see Michael when he was sick like me. She said you sang to him and made him feel better." Peter glanced up at Marcus's mother, who was watching the interaction with obvious emotion. "I did visit Michael," Peter confirmed. "He was a very special boy and he taught me some important things about being brave." "Am I brave?" Marcus asked, the question carrying all the weight of a child, trying to understand his own difficult circumstances. Peter looked into Marcus's eyes and saw the same mixture of fear and courage that he had seen in Michael's face 15 years earlier. "Marcus," he said thoughtfully, "can I tell you what Michael taught me about being brave?" Marcus nodded eagerly. "He taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going even when you are scared. And from what I can see, you're here at this celebration. You're asking questions. You're thinking about other people like Michael. That looks pretty brave to me." Marcos considered this for a moment, then smiled. Michael sounds like he was a good friend. He was the best kind of friend, Peter agreed. The kind who makes you want to be a better person. As Marcus and his mother moved on to explore more of the center, Peter reflected on the circular nature of these encounters. Here he was, 15 years later, still having conversations inspired by Michael's example, still learning from children who faced their challenges with more grace than most adults could manage. Dr. Martinez, now the director of pediatric services at the hospital, approached Peter as he stood contemplating the memorial plaque. "Peter," she said, "I wanted to thank you for being here today. Your presence means so much to these families." "Dr. Martinez, thank you for everything you've done to make this center a reality. Michael would be amazed to see what's grown from that one night 15 years ago." "You know," Dr. Martinez said thoughtfully, "in my 40 years of practicing medicine, I've learned that healing is rarely a simple process. It's not just about treating symptoms or even curing diseases. It's about treating the whole person, their fears, their hopes, their need for connection and meaning. What you started with Michael, what Sarah has built with this center, it's a reminder that medicine is as much about the heart as it is about the body." As the afternoon wound down and guests began to leave, Peter found himself alone for a moment in Michael's memorial room, a quiet space filled with comfortable chairs and shelves of music and books where families could find solace during difficult times. The room's centerpiece was a display case containing some of Michael's personal items, the guitar pick Peter had given him, some of his artwork, and the original letter he had written to Peter all those years ago. Peter read the letter again, still moved by the simple honesty of a child reaching out for comfort in his darkest hour. As he read, he became aware of someone entering the room behind him. "He had beautiful handwriting for a 10-year-old, said a voice. Peter turned to see an elderly man he didn't recognize. The man was well-dressed and carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to responsibility and leadership. "I'm sorry," Peter said. "I don't think we've met." "Robert Thompson," the man said, extending his hand. "Michael was my grandson." Peter felt his breath catch. Michael's grandfather, a man he had heard about but never met. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Peter Cetera. I'm so honored to meet you." "The honor is mine," Robert replied. "I've wanted to thank you for 15 years for what you did for Michael and our family." They stood together in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking at Michael's letter in the display case. "You know," Robert said finally, "Michael talked about your visit constantly during his final days. But what struck me most wasn't just how happy it made him. It was how it changed his whole perspective on what his life meant. After you visited, he stopped talking about all the things he wouldn't get to do and started talking about all the ways he might be able to help other kids who were going through what he was experiencing. Michael had wisdom far beyond his years," Peter replied. "He taught me that the impact of a life isn't measured by its length." "Exactly," Robert agreed. "And look what he accomplished in just 10 years. This center, Sarah's career in music therapy, Ashley's work with young patients, your foundation, all the other children who have been helped because of the chain of kindness that started with his letter to you. He may not have lived to grow up, but his influence keeps growing every day." Robert paused, looking directly at Peter. "I'm a businessman, Mr. Cetera. I've spent my career measuring success in terms of profit margins and market share. But watching what's grown from my grandson's short life has taught me that the most important successes can't be measured in conventional ways. They're measured in changed hearts, in healed spirits, in connections made between people who needed each other." As the sun set over Chicago, casting a golden light through the windows of Michael's memorial room, Peter felt a profound sense of completion and continuity. The scared 10-year-old boy who had written him a letter 15 years ago had set in motion a legacy that would outlive all of them. Music had indeed proven to be medicine, and human connection had proven to be healing, just as Michael had somehow understood it would be. The final words of Michael's letter, framed on the wall, seemed to glow in the evening light. Thank you for making such beautiful songs. Your friend, Michael Thompson. Peter smiled, understanding now that Michael had been wrong about one thing. Peter wasn't the one who had made the beautiful songs. Michael was. Michael's life had been a song of courage and hope and love that continued to play in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by his story. And the most beautiful part of Michael's song was that it would never truly end. It would keep playing in different keys and variations, through every child who found comfort in the music therapy center, through every act of kindness inspired by his example, through every person who learned that true heroism wasn't about conquering death, but about choosing love, even in the face of loss. As Peter prepared to leave the memorial room, he whispered a quiet thank you to the boy whose brief life had taught him what it really meant to make music that mattered. Then he walked out into the Chicago evening, carrying Michael's song in his heart, and ready to continue sharing it with anyone who needed to hear that they were not alone, that their struggles mattered, and that love, real, honest, unconditional love, was indeed the most glorious thing of all. The story of Michael Thompson and Peter Cetera had become legend in the world of pediatric medicine and music therapy. But for those who knew the truth, it was much more than a legend. It was proof that sometimes the most profound acts of heroism come not from those who seem powerful or famous, but from ordinary people, a scared child, a grieving mother, a musician who chose kindness, who decide to reach across the darkness and offer whatever light they can share. And in that offering, in that simple act of human connection, miracles happen. Not the kind that cure diseases or change circumstances, but the kind that heal spirits and create legacies, and remind us all that every life, no matter how brief, has the power to change the world. Michael Thompson lived for 10 years, 8 months, and 15 days. But his song, the song of courage in the face of fear, of hope in the midst of despair, of love that transcends even death, will play forever in the hearts of all who were blessed to hear it. Like and subscribe if this story touched your heart. Share your own experiences with the power of music and human kindness in the comments below. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create the biggest changes in the world.